When you think of neuroplasticity in a very basic manner, it's our brain's ability, the neurons in our brain, to kind of adapt and change and reorganize. So if you're working with folks with mental health challenges, criminal justice involved populations, people with brain injuries, this really goes to the heart, I think, of interventions. Maybe they have problematic coping patterns. Maybe they're negative all the time. Maybe they're moody all the time. Maybe they have really impaired flexibility. They're rigid. They can't take feedback from anyone. We may think they're just being stubborn. If we peel back the layers of this and we look at the pieces of the puzzle, could that person had a lot of trauma earlier on in life that impacted their neuroplasticity? Could that be a possibility? Absolutely. I'm not saying in every case, but look through a neuroscience lens. It will provide you different avenues for understanding.
Welcome to the Managing Mental Health podcast. Join us as we talk to leading psychologists about all areas of mental health, and we hear from real people that have overcome real mental health struggles who can now share hope and encouragement for us all. I'm Jamie, social psychologist, author, and trauma recovery coach, and we're back today with part 4 of our 6-part series on executive functioning. If you're just now joining us, be sure to go back and watch the other episodes where we learned all about what executive functioning is, what it's responsible for, the important clinical and forensic considerations, even physical health implications. We also learned some things that cause executive dysfunction, like traumatic brain injuries, fetal drug exposure, childhood trauma, and neurological disorders, just to name a few. So we're back with our very special guest, Dr. Jared Brown. Welcome back, Dr. Brown. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Jamie, for having me back. Good day, everyone.
All right. We're going to be diving in today a little bit deeper on a academic perspective, in some sense, a medical perspective that thankfully has gotten a lot more traction in the past decade or so. It's amazing the more we learn about mental health issues, the causes, the treatments, it's almost like the proverbial Pandora's box. We just keep opening and learning more and more about the body, the mind, the spirit, how everything's connected and how it works together, and some of the details of that. So today we're going to look at some details of the neuroscience perspective. So, Dr. Brown, lead us off. What are we talking about in terms of neuroscience and neuroplasticity?
Yeah, I thought it'd be good to have a full episode on neuroplasticity because this field really gives me hope. So if you're working with folks with mental health challenges, criminal justice involved populations, people with brain injuries, this really goes to the heart, I think, of interventions. When you think of neuroplasticity, we've all probably heard it in the media now, read things about it, but in a very basic manner, it's our brain's ability, the neurons in our brain, to kind of adapt and change and reorganize. And this can be done to enhance performance. Maybe it's a person that doesn't have any disabilities whatsoever, but you want to enhance academic performance. You want to enhance your athletic performance. There's some good research out there that shows if you can understand and really harness the power of neuroplasticity, it could enhance performance in whatever you're doing. But a lot of this research and where I focus is looking at our brain's ability to change, adapt, and learn new skills after an injury to the brain. Maybe you're working in drug and alcohol treatment programs. Maybe you're working with clients with severe mental health challenges. There's tons of research on the use of neuroplasticity-based informed approaches that can really help your clients. I'm not saying get cured from all of these things, but really enhance their existing cognitive capabilities. So we've learned in other segments, Cognitive capabilities would be executive function,
Hmm.
our memory, our attention, and the list goes on and on and on. So why do we want to care about neuroplasticity? Because maladaptive plasticity, when you think of maladaptive, think of the bad things.
Mhm.
If somebody's had a brain injury, if somebody had a ton of childhood trauma, if somebody was exposed to drugs and alcohol in utero, maybe they grew up in a home and they're exposed to just chronic stress and trauma day in and day out, that can lead to maladaptive plasticity. And if that happens over and over and over again, the wiring in our brain can contribute to all kinds of things. So, for example, something very practical, if you're growing up in a home, your parents are extremely negative. If you are growing up in a home where there's a lot of abuse or chaos, your brain becomes accustomed to that over and over and over again. That can contribute to anger control problems, rumination, depression, anxiety. That is more maladaptive plasticity at work. On the flip side of that, maybe somebody, as they get a little bit older, they go to therapy and they want to kind of rewrite that story. Neuroplasticity can help rewrite that story somewhat. I'm not saying it's going to cure all those experiences,
Mhm.
but if you go against that and do the opposite and you really work with somebody who understands these things, we can start retraining, rewiring the brain, and create new neural connections that can help maybe lead to better habits, better thinking patterns, and overall just enhancement of your overall quality of life. And the same can be said too if somebody lives a sedentary lifestyle and then gets into exercise. Somebody eats a ton of fast food, but now they switch to maybe eating the Mediterranean diet.
Mm.
Forming new habits is a component of neuroplasticity, doing the opposite of what you want to do to achieve. So if you're a negative person, you have these negative thinking patterns, fight against it. Every morning you wake up, maybe you're journaling about one thing you're happy about, even if you don't feel it. Fake it till you make it. Because neuroplasticity research shows if you do these things over and over and over again, we're starting to retrain, rewire the brain and creating new pathways away from maybe those negative maladaptive pathways. So that is a very basic overview of neuroplasticity. If we had a full day to talk about these things, I think it would be important to really consider what's going on at that molecular level that contributes to neuroplasticity. Neurogenesis is a term you'd want to be aware of. Basically, what that is development of new neurons. Being aware of the term synaptic plasticity. That's a big topic I talk about when I give trainings on this. If you haven't heard of the term synaptic plasticity, it's basically the junctions between the neurons in your brain that allow them to communicate with other parts of the brain. So practically speaking, you and I, Jamie, we're on the phone. You're on one side of the phone, I'm on the other side of the phone. Is the connection between the phone lines working good? We can hear each other. We're communicating effectively. That's synaptic plasticity at play. When synaptic plasticity is not working properly, we're on our phone, we're catching every other word. Jamie, what'd you say? You're breaking up there. That's kind of what's going on in the brain. And there's
Mhm.
been enough research now that shows if you're working with clients with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorders, learning problems, brain-based impairments, they probably have something going on that isn't working effectively with their synaptic plasticity. That's a broad overview, Jamie. I'll stop there for a moment, see if you have any thoughts, anything you want me to go deeper into.
Yeah, that's a lot of good stuff, and you made a lot of good points. I love the connection or the comparison between physical exercise, so physical health. That's something that we can easily understand and is very, broadly discussed in society in terms of if you go to the gym and you're doing a specific exercise and you're working on a certain muscle, you expect that muscle is going to grow And the same with the neuroplasticity. If you begin to work on that, like you mentioned, journaling, it's not going to be day one that you see the results of that, but over time, you repeat that same exercise, that same pattern, you're instilling in your nervous system, in your brain, the growth, the positive growth of neural pathways, synapses, the connections there. So that's a good point. And also, I want to hit home too on something I think that a lot of people either just it hasn't been widely taught or understood, and that is you talked about, say, growing up in a home with either abuse or extremely harsh, communications and treatment, and how you'll see people grow up into young adulthood and older, and they may have certain attitudes or personality types. And I think we kind of take that for granted and just say, okay, well, that's just the way they are. They're just a negative person. And this is something that is, especially as a child, your brain is developing, it's growing. And so when it's continually exposed to these conditions, to this negative environment, it's your neural pathways are physically growing in a different direction. And so that neuroplasticity is that ability to change directions and to grow. So their brain is developed into a way that the nervous system is always looking for fight, flight, or freeze responses from the environment, no matter what's going on around them. So I think that's really important for us to understand is this, under conditions like that, it's not just a matter of choice or personality or mood. Um, these people, your brain can come accustomed to that and be physically developed in that way that's causing certain responses and behaviors.
I think that ties in perfectly to what we spoke about earlier is maladaptive neuroplasticity. So again, if somebody grew up or at any point in their life, if they had a really chronic illness
Mm-hmm.
that was going on and on and on and on, or severe injuries, or they're dealing with extreme stress, trauma, major depression, day in and day out, drug problems day in and day out, and even chronic pain issues day in and day out. That contributes to problematic neuroplasticity. And then, practically speaking, that can trickle down into contributing to poor memory, poor
Mm.
learning problems, and impaired flexibility, to name a few. So, if you have that child growing up in a home with all of these not good things happening, and now you work with that child as a teenager or an adult, they may now have memory problems. They may be diagnosed with a learning issue, or as they get into a K through 12 environment, how many educators really take into account the trauma and the neuroplasticity piece, where that child now could look like they have ADHD or a learning problem and be labeled as a problem child?
Mm.
Or as they get older, that you kind of alluded to this, maybe they have problematic coping patterns. Maybe they're negative all the time. Maybe they're moody all the time. Maybe they have really impaired flexibility where we've all met people like this, and we're all like this probably under the wrong circumstance.
Mm.
But that person is just always their way or the highway. They're rigid. They can't take feedback from anyone. We may think they're just being stubborn. If we peel back the layers of this and we look at the pieces of the puzzle, could that person had a lot of trauma earlier on in life that impacted their neuroplasticity? And now fast forward, they're just very stubborn and rigid and locked into their own ways, and they're moody and irritable and ruminate all the time. Could that be a possibility? Absolutely. I'm not saying in every case, but look through a neuroscience lens. It will provide you different avenues for understanding, empathy, compassion, and intervention for people that may have these really problematic, rigid coping patterns and ways in which they present to you in whatever setting you're in.
Yep. So, how do we look at this then on the growth and healing side? So, what are some aspects or considerations for stimulating positive neuroplasticity that you mentioned earlier?
I know we definitely could spend many hours talking about this topic, no doubt about it. So I'll give you just a few things I'll go through really quickly that can adversely impact neuroplasticity. And then the opposite of that, maybe we stop doing those things.
Okay.
The Western way of eating, the Western diet. So if you're one again to eat tons of fast food, you drink lots of soda, you're consuming tons of sugar, you don't get a lot of fiber, you don't have a high intake of omega-3 fatty acids, you spike your blood sugar levels all the time, you're eating tons of processed red meat, that can trigger inflammation. That can lead to issues with neuroplasticity. There is some research that also shows that chronic sleep issues and long-term sedentary behaviors, so somebody that just sits around all the time, doesn't get a lot of movement, maybe they are watching TV day in and day out, hour after hour, that can impact neuroplasticity. There's a case I consulted on a few years ago, and it was an adult woman. She weighed 450 pounds. She had so many mental health diagnoses, so many medical health issues.
Mm.
She laid around 14 hours a day, and then the rest of the time slept. She really only got up to get some food and to go to the bathroom. Profound, probably neuroplasticity issues. Don't know with certainty, but it is a huge variable there. So looking at our lifestyle choices, and we've talked about that in other segments.
Mm-hmm.
If someone smokes cigarettes, that impacts neuroplasticity. If you are in a relationship and it's just filled with chaos and everyone's always arguing and yelling and screaming, that's not good for our brain and body. So all of those things can impact neuroplasticity. On the flip side of that, what can we do about it? Very common sense stuff. We all know this. Exercise, getting good sleep, treating depression. Depression is a very complex medical and psychiatric disorder.
Mm-hmm.
When you study depression, people probably think it's a very simple disorder. You get sad, low mood. But if you peel back the layers of depression, and I've given talks on this, what do we need to be aware of? Inflammation, epigenetics, the gut-brain axis, what we eat, who we associate with, all of these things can play into depression. Anytime we can reduce our stress in a very healthy manner,
Mm-hmm.
that promotes good neuroplasticity. Focusing on implementing whatever you can do, even if you don't feel like doing it. Happiness, joy is a great way to promote positive neuroplasticity. I wake up every day, I don't feel happy every day by any stretch, but I fight against it. Go for a walk, do yoga, read something positive, journal, whatever you can do. If you wake up negative and you jump right into your day-to-day routine and you don't really be mindful and intentional about kind of shifting that mindset may be with you all day long. And now you're feeling more anxious, you're more irritable, you're more moody, you're more snappy with your friends and family and coworkers. Whatever we can do, even if you don't think it's going to help, I'm pretty confident if you get in that habit, waking up every day and doing something really nice for yourself, over time, that can change the neuroplasticity. Self-compassion can be great too. If you wake up every day and you find fault with everything you do and you are really harsh to yourself and you look at yourself in the mirror and you just think you're a bad person, that is going to impact our brain health. Self-compassion is a great way to combat shame, low self-esteem. Easier said than done. Obviously, this stuff takes time.
Hmm.
Be around good, positive people. Meditation can be very helpful. Doing everything you can to empower yourself, motivate yourself, stick with these things. Don't be one, and I see this a lot with even a lot of friends and family. You jump on something, you think it's good, you do it once or twice, and then you give up and throw in the towel because you don't feel like there's a benefit. You may not experience that benefit right away. Look at this through the long game. You might have to do this stuff many, many days, many, many weeks before you really start feeling the benefit. But if you set your day with intentionality and just go for a walk, even if it's a 6-minute walk, get some natural sunlight. Don't jump on the screen in the morning and start reading the news or smoking cigarettes. I mean, those are things we all know probably aren't good for our brain and body. So
Hmm.
those are a few things, Jamie. I got many more I can share with you, but I'll stop there for a moment, see if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, all that. You named everything on my checklist, so I'm happy now. I and I can absolutely, you know, testify to the positive impact of lifestyle choices and changes. And I think the key is exactly what you said: is consistency and longevity. Adapt to a long-term mindset, and that, okay, these little changes, these little habits I can build over time will start multiplying in benefit as I go along.
Yeah.
It's almost investing in your mental health and physical health both is like investing in the stock market. You put in a little bit of money consistently over time and it grows, and the results you get from it grows. And yeah, like you said, the journaling, the yoga, the meditation, uh, if you do it a couple of times and you don't see like, oh, okay, I'm just, magically healed, and you just give up, that's just not the way it works. But if you stick with it and just do it, like you mentioned, even the walking, if you can do 6-10 minutes. I know I used to, uh, one of the places I used to work, we had kind of the typical office hours, 8 to 5, and we would have the lunch break. And I started just at lunch. If I had an hour lunch break, I would take my tennis shoes with me to work. And when it was time for lunch, I would put on my tennis shoes and I would hit the door. I would walk for 15 minutes one direction. And guess what? I had to turn around and come back to get back to the office, which was another 15 minutes. That gave me my 30 minutes walk, and I had 30 minutes to sit and eat my lunch. I had to be a little proactive in bringing my lunch on those days. So I wasn't rushed. So I wasn't skipping meals. But the benefits were, the days I did that, I didn't feel sluggish in the afternoons. I was able to be mentally sharp. I felt better emotionally throughout the week because it was just that little habit that I built, that little lifestyle change that made a huge difference.
Great testament. I can give something practical too, where I changed my wife and I changed our diet several years ago now. We mainly eat the Mediterranean diet. And prior to that, I always ate the Western diet.
Mm.
Lunch break at work years ago, go out to eat with coworkers, and maybe we went to a buffet.
Uh-huh.
Came back to the office, could barely stay awake, energy terrible, little anxious.
Uh-huh.
Felt that way every single time I did that. I never connected the dots because I didn't know about this stuff years ago. But then started doing what you're doing and going for a walk, having a glass of water, having a good salad, some high quality protein. And sure enough, every single time came back to the office, happier, more alert, and it never failed every time.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that over and over again. The nice thing about all these things we're talking about, they do work.
Mm-hmm.
But the tricky thing is, you got to stick with it. You can't just do these things for a few months. Okay, I'm starting to feel better. And then deviate back to the old habits, because very quickly you will go right back to square one. So
Yeah.
it is really a lifelong journey. It's difficult,
Mm-hmm.
but it's important. And if you truly want to feel better, get moving more, get that natural
Mm-hmm.
sunlight, be very mindful of what you're putting into your body in terms of food. Are you one that fuels your body through the day with coffee, with sugar sweetened beverages, with donuts, with vending machine food? Just think about how you feel. Maybe you feel okay right now, but that will catch up to you as you get a little older, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
Or you want to fuel your body with a good glass of water,
Mm-hmm.
some good healthy nuts, some good healthy proteins, some vegetables, some fruits, and just see how you feel on that. And most of the time, people do indicate they feel better. Jamie, can I give just a few other strategies that maybe
Yeah.
people have thought of?
Yeah,
I've given
absolutely.
some I've given some talks recently to different groups on this topic of neuroplasticity, and I've talked about a couple interventions that we never probably would think about. And there's research around this: bird watching. Google bird watching and brain health. There's some interesting studies that show that if you engage in regular bird watching, that may reduce your stress and anxiety. It's been shown to maybe improve attention and memory, amongst all kinds of other things. Taekwondo. I'm not advocating if you go out and start Taekwondo, but I was really digging deep into the literature preparing for these talks, and I came across some good research on Taekwondo. Taekwondo can be very, very good for our brains and body. There's something in the neuroplasticity research that's also called self-directed neuroplasticity, and it makes sense. From an intervention standpoint, when you think of self-directed neuroplasticity, Jamie, what can you and I do for our own neuroplasticity where we look inward? So think about active engagement. Are you one to be proactive and really seek out these things, seek out knowledge, stay curious and learn about these topics? That can be very helpful. Seek clarity as well. If you're confused on something that we're talking about, email. That's one example. Ask questions, dig deeper. These can be very, very helpful. Learn a new skill, because the heart of learning really goes hand in hand with neuroplasticity. I'm not saying you have to go back to school or take up a certification. Find a hobby, find an interest, learn about it. Spend a little time every day, even if it's a couple minutes. Learn something new.
Mm-hmm.
It's exercise for the brain. Be very purposeful in what you do. Have good self-reflection, and you can journal around that. Or maybe you're not one to like to write. Maybe it's a digital journal. Having good self-reflection, just thinking about things, contemplating. Be okay with boredom. Also often, so many of us struggle with boredom and putting down our gadgets.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere we go, look around. If someone's sitting in the lobby, how many people are just sitting there, closing their eyes in silent? Almost everywhere I go, I look around, everybody is on their gadget.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing some thinking, doing. Slow the brain down too. Self-compassion, as I spoke about before, form those positive health habits and really engage in positive thinking. And maybe you're on the fence still. And again, there's a lot more to neuroplasticity and what we're talking about. But why do you want to learn about this topic? How would this benefit you or the people you serve around you, or even as a parent? How can this enhance your parenting abilities? How can this help your kids? Well, the research clearly shows enhanced neuroplasticity can play a role in improving our memory, our problem solving abilities, our learning capabilities, our decision making, our creativity, And it really can help with just enhancement of skills in whatever setting we're in. If it's a young child, if it's an adult, if it's someone that wants to learn a musical instrument, pick up a new language, play sports, it's neuroplasticity is applicable to every person, every field of study. And I encourage you to continue to learn as much as possible about this important topic.
Absolutely. I think all of these pieces of the puzzle, when we're talking about executive functioning, we're just learning more and more. And a lot of these things are kind of what we should just consider as basic in life. But we become so distracted, so busy. And like you said, sometimes it's even a matter where we have to retrain ourselves, so to speak, on relaxing and maybe allowing a little boredom and not just constantly trying to be engaged, and making sure we're going down the list of the lifestyle choices that we make, with diet, exercise, education, mental stimulation. I know my mom, even at her age, she's still very mentally sharp. She constantly is doing puzzles, reading. She goes to an exercise class twice a week. So everything that you've mentioned is just, it shows that it works in terms of neuroplasticity and the positive aspects of that, which of course is part of the executive functioning. So thank you very much again for your remarkable insight on this topic. And listeners, join us next time for the part 5 of this 6-part series on executive functioning, where we'll discuss the importance of self-regulation. And you can find a list of each episode in the description. And we will see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share to stay connected to this community of mental well-being as we all learn and grow together. Dr. Brown, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, everyone.